How shall I begin to recount a tale that haunts my every waking hour and stalks my dreams with a terror so profound it eclipses all reason? The year was 1579, and I, a restless soul disenchanted with the humdrum existence of Lisbon, sought adventure and fortune in the boundless, untamed wilderness of the New World. Fate, ever a cruel trickster, would lead me to the edge of sanity and beyond. Manuel, my traveling companion, was a Portuguese trader of dubious morals and boundless bravado. He assured me of our safe passage to a village of the Tupinambá, a tribe whose practices were whispered of in the port towns of San Vincent. Their customs, he said, were misunderstood, their feasts merely rituals of respect and honor. My naivete was such that I believed him. We journeyed upriver, the dense jungle closing around us like the maw of some primordial beast. The air was thick and cloying, each breath a laborious effort. The river, a glistening serpent, reflected the fragmented sky above. We arrived at the Tupinambá village as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world into a sepulchral twilight. The villagers emerged, their bodies painted in vibrant hues, their expressions enigmatic. Their leader, Ajuricaba, greeted us with a measured courtesy that concealed his true intentions. The firelight danced in his eyes, and I felt a shiver of foreboding. The feast was prepared with an efficiency that spoke of long-held tradition. A central pyre blazed, its flames licking hungrily at the night sky. Around it, the villagers gathered, their chants low and resonant, a sound that seemed to reverberate within my very bones. At the heart of this gathering lay a man, bound but unbroken. His painted body bore the marks of his deeds. A warrior of an opposing tribe, his fate sealed. Through Manuel's translation, Ajuricaba explained the ritual. The man's flesh was not sustenance, but a vessel of strength and courage. To consume him was to absorb his essence, his valor, his very spirit. It was justice, they said. It was communion. As the chants rose, so too did my unease. The forest itself seemed to lean closer, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. Was it the wind, or something far older, far darker? My hands trembled as I clutched my journal, the quill's tip shaking as if possessed. I wrote feverishly, desperate to anchor myself to the tangible world. Then came the screams. They began low, guttural, and grew into a crescendo of sound that defied description. It was not merely pain. It was a symphony of fear, defiance, and something I dared not name. The villagers moved with a unity that was almost supernatural, their motions fluid and synchronized. The shadows cast by the fire twisted and writhed, forming shapes that should not exist. Faces leered at me from the darkness, their eyes hollow yet piercing. My breath quickened, my pulse thundered in my ears. Manuel's face was a mask of horror. He turned to me, his lips moving, but his words were drowned by the cacophony. "Run," he seemed to say, and this time my legs obeyed. We fled into the jungle, the dense foliage clawing at our skin as if the earth itself sought to claim us. My lungs burned. My heart pounded like a war drum. We ran until the light of the fire was a distant glow, until the chants were no more than whispers in the wind. Manuel, ever the braver of the two, urged me to press on, but my legs faltered. "We must hide," I gasped, dragging him into the hollow of a sprawling tree. The air was damp and reeked of decay, but it was sanctuary, or so I thought. The silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps, soft yet deliberate, drawing closer. My breath hitched as the light of a torch illuminated our hiding place. Manuel shoved me further into the shadows and bolted, drawing their attention away. I dared not move, my body trembling as I watched him disappear into the darkness. They caught him. From my vantage point, hidden beneath the roots, I saw them drag him back toward the village. His cries tore through the night, a sound that will forever haunt me. I followed at a distance, unable to abandon him, yet too afraid to intervene. Back at the pyre, they bound him as they had the warrior before. Ajuricaba's voice rose above the chants, his words measured and ceremonial. The flesh carries the spirit. To consume is to honor, to transcend. The villagers repeated his words, their voices merging into a chilling harmony. They began. The flames illuminated their faces, now grotesque masks of reverence and fervor. The air was thick with the scent of charred flesh and burning wood, a nauseating miasma that turned my stomach. I clutched the tree for support, bile rising in my throat as I watched them partake. Each bite was deliberate, almost sacred. their eyes closed as if in prayer, their expression serene. A Jurikaba held a piece aloft, his voice ringing out. From earth to spirit, from spirit to us. Strength flows, life renews. The words etched themselves into my mind, a brand of insanity I could not erase. I could endure no more. My legs buckled, and I sank to the ground, retching into the earth. The world spun, a whirlpool of firelight and shadows, and my vision blurred. The last thing I saw was a Jurikaba's piercing gaze, as if he knew I was there, as if he welcomed my silent witness. When I awoke, I was alone by the riverbank. The village was gone, as if it had never been. My journal lay beside me, its pages blank. My hands were stained, the color deep and unyielding, the source unknown. I tried to wash them in the river, but the stains would not fade. The river itself seemed to recoil from my touch. I wandered, dazed through the jungle, the whispers of the forest now a constant companion. They spoke of secrets I could not fathom, of truths that twisted my soul. Was I alive? Or had I been claimed by the ritual, my essence now part of some eternal cycle? Even now, as I recount this tale, I feel the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The air around me grows heavy, the shadows deepen. I write not for understanding, for I know that is beyond my grasp, but for the faint hope that someone, somewhere, might heed my warning. The jungle does not forget, nor does it forgive.
I do not know if it was pride, madness, or something more sinister that guided my steps that night, but I have often wondered if my path had already been sealed by the unseen. Even now, when the shadows deepen and the winds carry whispers I dare not understand, I cannot forget what I saw, or what I believe I saw. Our village lay nestled on the edge of the great Atlantic forest, near the serpentine curves of the Paraíba do Sul River. The year was 1567, and the air carried the weight of conflict. The white invaders, the Portuguese, had begun their relentless encroachment, bringing with them strange tools, even stranger gods, and promises laced with deceit. As Tamoios, warriors of these sacred lands, we fought with ferocity, but within our unity, fractures had begun to appear. It started with him, Kuarasi, the elder of our tribe, a man whose wisdom was said to surpass that of the jaguar, stalking the jungle's depths. But recently his words grew strange, laced with warnings that made the boldest among us falter. He spoke of an alhanda, a spirit of torment, angry at the blood spilled upon the soil. He claimed that the forest's cries had reached him in his dreams, and that a reckoning would come if we ignored the warnings. Fool that I was, I laughed at his tales. The spirits will not punish the brave, I said. And yet, I could not shake the unease in his clouded eyes. One evening, as the village prepared for war, Kuarasi gathered us around the communal fire. His voice, low and rasping, held a peculiar cadence, as if he chanted in a language not entirely of this world. He spoke of a forbidden chant used only in times of great despair. This chant, he said, could summon the spirits to aid us, but its power was dangerous, for it demanded sacrifice, a toll none could fathom. Leave your foolish rituals for the old, I spat. My words carried weight among the warriors. I was young, sharp of spear and mind, and my bravado often silenced those who disagreed. The strength of our arms will prevail. My words were met with murmurs of agreement, though a few glanced nervously toward Kuarasi, whose face was an unreadable mask. That night, I lay in my hammock, my mind restless. The jungle seemed alive with whispers, the rustle of leaves too rhythmic to be mere wind. And then, faintly, I heard it. A chant, low, mournful, and echoing through the dense canopy. I rose, spear in hand, and followed the sound, the rhythmic beat of my heart, a drum that quickened with each step. The forest was alive in a way I had never known, every shadow seeming to twist and writhe as if mocking my presence. As the chant grew louder, I realized it came from the sacred grove, a place forbidden to all but the elders. When I reached the grove, I froze. There, under the pale light of the moon, Kurasi knelt. His arms were raised, his voice weaving the chant in a language older than the trees themselves. Around him, strange carvings marked the earth, glowing faintly with a light that defied logic. "Elder," I barked, my voice trembling despite my attempt to appear resolute. "What are you doing here? This is madness." Kurasi did not turn. Instead, his chant rose in intensity, and for a fleeting moment, I swore the air shimmered as if the veil between worlds had thinned. Then I saw them. Ice. Dozens? No, hundreds, blinking from the shadows of the grove. They were not human. "Leave," he hissed, his voice breaking for the first time. "You cannot undo this now." But my pride overcame my fear. I stepped forward, my spear raised. "You endanger us all with your folly," I cried, preparing to drag him away. But then, the ground beneath me shifted. No, not shifted. It breathed. The earth pulsed like a beating heart, and I stumbled, my spear falling from my grasp. The carvings around Kurasi flared brighter, and I realized the chant had ceased. The elder turned to me, his face pale and hollow, his eyes filled with something I could not name. Was it pity? Fear? "You do not understand," he whispered. "You were never meant to be here." The jungle roared to life. Shapes emerged from the shadows, figures tall and spindly with faces that seemed both human and animal. Their movements were disjointed, as if the very act of existing in this world caused them pain. I tried to speak, but no sound escaped my lips. My body felt heavy, as though unseen hands pressed upon me. Kurasi stepped toward me, his face etched with resignation. "It is you," he murmured. "The spirits demanded you." Before I could respond, the figures surrounded me. Their touch was cold, not of this world. They whispered in my ear, their words incomprehensible yet heavy with meaning. My vision blurred, the grove spinning as if the world itself rejected my presence. And then there was silence. When I awoke, I was alone in the grove. The carvings had vanished, and the moon's light now seemed weak, unable to pierce the suffocating darkness. I stumbled back to the village, my mind a storm of confusion. But when I arrived, I found it deserted. No fire burned, no voices called. Only the oppressive hum of the jungle remained. I sit here now, recounting these events, yet I cannot say what is real. Was it the spirits? A trick of the mind? The silence of the village haunts me, for it seems louder than any chant, any scream. And sometimes, when the wind is still and the jungle falls quiet, I hear it again, the forbidden chant. It calls to me.
I do not speak to be forgiven, nor to be understood. I speak because the silence now bears too great a weight, crushing, relentless. I was there, in the dense shadows of the ceiba trees, where the jungle whispers secrets older than any name I've borne. I was there among the Itza, my people, warriors of the jaguar's blood. I was there when the gods themselves turned their eyes away. It was the year the Spaniards first dared to approach Tayasal, our island fortress, hidden within the folds of Lake Petén, Itza. Their clumsy boats carried steel and smoke, but it was not their coming that haunts me. No, it was what the jungle gave us in their place, what the night bore from its endless womb. I must begin before that night, in the time of calm before the storm. We were hunters of men and beasts alike, worshippers of Kukulkan, and the jaguar spirit, Balaam, dwelt within our hearts. I was called Apakal then, the elder of my kin, the keeper of stories and laws. My words could cut deeper than obsidian, and my hands had spilled enough blood to dye my skin with an unseen stain. But it was not steel nor courage that marked that year. It was the dreams. First, the youngest hunters, those who had barely touched their spears, spoke of visions. They whispered of a creature cloaked in shadow, eyes like glowing embers, slipping through the trees without a sound. They said it bore no face, only a maw filled with jagged teeth. I dismissed them with a harsh laugh, told them the jungle births phantoms for the weak-hearted. But then I dreamed. In my vision, I stood on the shores of the lake. Though the waters had turned black as spilled ink, the sky was choked with stars, and they watched me, unblinking, like eyes of the gods themselves. Beneath my feet, the earth shifted. A voice rose, not of a man, not of any creature I knew. It spoke in a tongue older than our chants, a rhythm of hunger and fire. And then I saw it. The jaguar, but not as I had known it. Its fur shimmered like obsidian, its eyes burned with the fury of the sun, and its body, it was not flesh, not entirely. I woke drenched in sweat, my heart a caged bird, its wings battering my ribs. I did not speak of it. To share such a vision was to invite fear, and fear was a poison. Still, unease crept through Tayaza like smoke. The hunters began to return empty-handed, their faces drawn with unspoken dread. The animals had vanished, deer, peccaries, even the macaws that filled the canopy with their cries. Only silence remained, a silence so profound it seemed to echo. And then the first disappearance came. A boy, barely of age, who had gone to fetch water. We found his jug near the shore, overturned, its contents spilled into the sand. There was no sign of him, no tracks, no struggle. Only the soft imprint of paws in the mud, too large to be real. That night the jungle sang, not with the chirps of cicadas or the hum of frogs, but with something darker, a low, thrumming growl that seemed to come from all directions. It vibrated in my chest, set my teeth on edge. I gathered the warriors, and we lit torches, their flames feeble against the pressing blackness. We would find the boy, I said. We would find whatever hunted us. But the jungle is no ally. Its roots seek to trip you, its shadows to swallow you whole. Hours passed, and though our eyes were sharp and our spears sharper, we found nothing. Until we did. Oh gods! We found the boy, or what remained of him. He hung from a ceiba tree, his body twisted unnaturally, his eyes wide open, staring into nothing. Around him, carved into the bark, were symbols, spirals, jagged lines, and the unmistakable outline of a jaguar. The warriors whispered of Balaam turned against us, of Kukulkan's anger. I silenced them with a shout, though my heart was no steadier than theirs. We brought the boy down, his weight a heavy curse, and carried him back to the village. But the village was empty. The fire smoldered, the hut stood silent, and the air reeked of decay. The only sound was the lake, its waters lapping at the shore like the breaths of some sleeping beast. And then we heard it, a growl, low and resonant, that seemed to come from within our very bones. The warriors froze, their eyes wide, their breaths shallow. From the shadows it emerged, the jaguar, but not the one of my dreams. This was a thing born of nightmares, its body shifting like smoke, its eyes pits of molten gold. It moved without sound, its form flickering like a dying flame. Behind it, the shadows moved, shapes of men and beasts intertwined, their faces twisted in silent screams. The warriors fell one by one, not by tooth or claw, but by something unseen, something that sapped the strength from their limbs and the light from their eyes. I ran, though I do not remember doing so. My legs carried me to the lake, where I fell to my knees, the water cool against my skin. I do not know how long I knelt there, staring at my reflection. When I finally looked up, the village was gone. Only the jungle remained, vast and eternal, its shadows deeper than before. Now, I sit alone, or so I tell myself. The jungle watches, its gaze heavy, unrelenting. The growl still echoes in my ears, a reminder that some things cannot be hunted, cannot be fought. I do not know if I write these words for the living or the dead. Perhaps it does not matter. All I know is this: the jaguar waits, and I am not alone.